Listen, just if the volume is up or down, just adjust it as I speak up. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد. So last week we said after Fath Mecca, two tribes from al-Ta'if, which is nearby, not far from Mecca, they get themselves ready because they find that Muhammad ﷺ with the conquest of Mecca is a serious threat to them now. And they were great in number, so they managed to put together 20,000 fighters under the leadership of a young man. His name was Malik ibn Auf. And he decides to bring along with them all their wealth and their families, their wives and their children. He thinks that's going to be just an extra motivator that will get his people to fight to the death. And we said among these two tribes, Hawazin and Thaqif, there was an elderly person. His name was Durayd ibn al-Simma. He said he was very old, extremely old, beyond, he lived beyond 100 years, definitely. And he was a very wise man in terms of warfare. He was very experienced, and his opinion was respected and he was looked up to. Malik ibn Auf, the leader, he chose a valley, which is a very wide, it's miles in width. The valley was extremely wide and big. It's called Wadi Awtas, the valley of Awtas, but it also has another name, Hunayn. The area has a name, Hunayn, so that's where the name of the battle comes from. The Muslims used to refer to this as the Battle of Hunayn, but they also used to refer to it as Yawm Awtas, the day of Awtas, which is the name of the valley. So they decided to camp there, and they wanted to use the geography against the Muslims, and thus they ambushed the Muslims. So they already settled in the valley. The Muslims were coming from. Did you get it? لا تخبي عادي. ما بدي اياها تخلص مش مشكلة. طيب. So the Ghatafan and Thaqif and Hawazin, they camped in the valley, in the lowlands. The Muslims, as they are approaching from Mecca towards al-Ta'if, they have to pass by this valley, and they're coming from a higher altitude, so they had to go down. They had to go down into the valley. And Malik ibn Auf thought that would be a very good place to ambush the Muslims. As they are descending, as soon as they descend, and it's not like an open plain or open kind of slope. No, it was between, again, the passage that they were taken was between two peaks. So they had to go through this sort of narrow opening. The Muslims had to go through that. So it doesn't give them a lot of room, a lot of space to maneuver and move around or organize themselves just in case. So Malik ibn Auf thought that would be a very good place to ambush them. So they actually were lying in wait around that kind of passage, because they were observing where the Muslims were coming from, and they realized that was the only way for them to descend into the valley of Awtas, or the valley of Hunayn. So they thought perfectly, the Muslims would be coming from here, we could just hide behind the two sides of this slope, and the moment they're trapped in the slope, we just start attacking them. It was a very perfect plan. It was a very perfect plan, and it was condoned and endorsed by the older person, Durayd ibn al-Simma. So their plan was, as soon as the Muslims start descending, and when they reach sort of halfway through, where a good number of the Muslims have already gone into this kind of pathway, which is going to become a trap for the Muslims, the plan was for the two tribes, Hawazin and Thaqif, to start shooting at them. And then when the time is right, they attack them physically. So the Prophet ﷺ, early before Fajr, he gets the Muslim army ready before they go into the valley, and he organizes the Muslim army into groups. And the Prophet ﷺ was riding a white mule. And the Prophet ﷺ was all ready. He had his armor on, he had his helmet on, and the Prophet ﷺ gave them the glad tidings that Allah promised them victory. Allah promised them victory. The Prophet ﷺ, the leading part of the Muslim army, the leading group, was put under the leadership of Khalid ibn al-Walid. So the Prophet ﷺ made very good use of Khalid ibn al-Walid, although still he was a new Muslim. But again, due to his expertise, the Prophet ﷺ realized this was a very valuable asset, and we should use him. I mean, put him to good use, not use him in a bad way, but put his skills to good use. We can use his skills, and there's a beautiful lesson here. There is a beautiful lesson that although he was a new Muslim, that does not prevent the Prophet ﷺ from utilizing his skills and putting him in a position of leadership where many people who had been Muslim before him were actually under his command, under his leadership. Today you will find sometimes, again, like I would try to take this kind of situation into today's world, and I would say for many Muslims today, if someone becomes a Muslim, someone starts practicing and they have skills, we seem to go into one of two extremes. We either sort of give them everything, a lot of power, where they are not ready, to handle that kind of power and responsibility. Or we do the opposite. We say, and these people are just new Muslim, or they just started practicing, they don't know nothing. So you sort of don't even make use of their skills. And sometimes there's personal competition. How come this person comes in and they take over? I've been here for much longer than them. So oftentimes a lot of these personal things, are actually interfere with such situations. And I would say instead of the Muslims and the general public benefiting from such skills, they get overshadowed just for the sake of personal reasons. Some person doesn't want to lose power, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of examples of this, unfortunately. But we look at the Prophet ﷺ, he made use of Khalid ibn Walid. He did not give him a huge amount of responsibility that would be beyond him. Neither did he just, put him on the fringes. He made a very good use of this man, and subhanAllah, that brought about a lot of benefits for the Muslims. So Khalid ibn Walid starts first descending into the valley, and with him his group was mainly made from Banu Sulaym, which was one of the tribes who used to live between Mecca and Medina. They had become Muslim, and they were actually with the Prophet ﷺ as he was coming to Mecca, as he was coming to take over Mecca. As soon as they enter there, and the rest of the Muslim army follows into that slope, now Thaqif and Hawazin, they start shooting arrows at Khalid ibn Walid and his group and the rest of the Muslims. And you can imagine 20,000 people. There were 20,000 people. And so it was more like a rainstorm of arrows, falling on the Muslims as they were in this tight spot. It was hard for them. They could not maneuver. It was a very small opening, very small passage, and they had to go through it. And you can't go left or right because that's more of a climbing a higher slope, which was very difficult and very bumpy. Or you had to go back, but the rest of the army was following, so there would be a clash. So it was a very perfect kind of ambush. So they start shooting at Khalid ibn Walid and his group, Banu Sulaym, and the rest of the Muslims who were following them. So what happened is that wreaked havoc among the Muslims. Complete chaos. And Khalid ibn Walid himself got shot many times. He was injured. And when Banu Sulaym, again, they were still somehow relatively new Muslims, and they have not, Iman has not taken root in their hearts yet. So when they saw that they were helpless in this situation, what they did, they just turned around and they start going backward. The rest of the Muslim army was already, marching on that slope towards the valley, and it's hard to stop that kind of momentum. So they were going against them. So they actually bumped into each other. They bumped into each other. One of the narrations indicates that says, فَالْتَحَمَ الْقَوْمُ فَرَكِبَ بَعْضُهُم بَعْضًا. Like the ones who were withdrawing and the ones who were already going down, they ended up in an extreme state of chaos where some of them started climbing on top of each other. Again, that's what happens in stampedes. For example, Hajj, when it gets very chaotic and there's a state of stampede and chaos, what happens? People start, walking on other people. That's how it ends up. So it was complete chaos that the Muslims were in at the moment. The Prophet ﷺ was already in that slope, and people started just running away, running for their life. Some of them reached Mecca, or the majority of them actually reached Mecca. The Prophet ﷺ, Khalid Mulid fell, he was injured. The Prophet ﷺ remained. Most of the people around just ended up running away and leaving the Prophet ﷺ, except for a small group that remained with the Messenger ﷺ. It was still early in the morning, probably just before Fajr, or maybe just after Fajr. Actually just before Fajr. Just before Fajr. Now, you look at the new Muslims like Abu Sufyan, Safwan ibn Umayyah, who was not Muslim at the time, Hakim ibn Hizam, who was a new Muslim, and others. When they saw this situation and this chaos, they withdrew. They took to the side and they started observing from a distance. What was their intention? They said, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. If the Muslims win, we're going to join them. If they don't win, we're already safe on that side. Again, like these were new Muslims, and like these were the leaders of Mecca. Safwan ibn Umayyah was not Muslim yet. But it shows you that humans are humans. Humans are humans. So this was a very pragmatic situation from them. Like they sort of, they left the Muslims to their fate. Instead of jumping to their help or trying to save the situation, they just didn't. And the Prophet ﷺ knew about all of this, but he let it go. And we will come to see how Salama radiallahu anha will actually, talk to the Prophet ﷺ about this issue, and that she suggested the Prophet ﷺ deals with that in a very decisive way, but the Prophet ﷺ let it go. Why? Because he knows humans are humans. And the Prophet ﷺ recognizes if certain humans have a weakness, you do not expect them to overcome that weakness so easily. Again, so when you put a people in a place, you put them where you trust them, where you can count on them. But you do not expect much more from them. You're not unrealistic with regards to your expectations. And that's a very good aspect of leadership, of the leadership of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when these Abu Sufyan, Safwan Umayyah, Hakim ibn Hizam, and others from Mecca, some of the other leaders of Mecca, were overlooking the situation, trying to see, one of them says that Hawazin and Thaqif are going to chase the Muslims till the Red Sea. They're going to chase them to the Red Sea. Obviously mocking the Muslims, but they were Muslims themselves. They were mocking the Prophet ﷺ and his companions. A guy called Khalid ibn al-Hanbal, and he was very close to Safwan ibn Umayyah. He started screaming to the top of his lungs, saying, "Ala batal al-sihr al-yawm." Most likely he was one of the new Muslims. He said, today the magic has been, undone. Talking about the Prophet ﷺ. Still claiming the Prophet ﷺ had magic, and it was undone today, it was exposed today. So Safwan, who was a non-Muslim, he hears that and he says to him, "Uskut faddallahu fak." He says, "Shut up, may Allah break your teeth." فوالله لأن يربني رجل من قريش أحب إلي من أن يربني رجل من هوازن. He didn't say that because he was like so keen about Islam, but he says, Wallah, I'd rather be led by someone from Quraysh, i.e. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, than being led or subjugated by someone from Hawazin. So it was a tribal thing. So he says, I prefer to have someone subjugate me who's from Quraysh better than someone from Hawazin takes over me. I don't agree with that. So it was all about, tribalism for them. The Prophet ﷺ remained, he maintained his position, And he did not sort of withdraw. He did not turn back on his heels. He remained firm. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu stayed with him. Umar al-Khattab stayed with him. Ali ibn Abi Talib stayed with him. Al-Abbas, his uncle, stayed with him. Al-Fadl, who's the son of Al-Abbas, stayed with him. Abu Sufyan al-Harith, the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ, stayed with him. Rabi' ibn al-Harith also stayed with him. Another few companions, they stayed with the Prophet ﷺ. Usama ibn Zayd as well. And the Prophet ﷺ is actually calling upon his companions. He says, إِلَيَّ أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ هَلُمُّوا إِلَيَّ. He says, oh people, come back to me. Come to me. Because they're running. People are just running for their life. It was complete chaos. The Prophet ﷺ is calling them to come and join him. He says, I am the messenger of Allah. And I'm Muhammad bin Abdullah. I'm Muhammad, the son of Abdullah. But none of them paid attention. They kept just running away. What happens? This is when people run for their life. You lose control. It's a very impulsive survival mode. It's not like you think, oh, if I were there, I would just respond to the Prophet ﷺ. You're talking about some of the great companions. Still, they were carried away with that kind of impulse. Why? Humans. Again, by the way, it's easy to theorize about these difficult times. You can say, if I were this, I would have done that. I would have remained firm, and so on and so forth. That's not easy. It's easy to say it, from the comfort of your home or the comfort of the masjid or wherever you are. But being in that situation is a completely different story. So then the Prophet ﷺ, upon seeing the Muslims still running away and only a small group of the companions stay with him, the Prophet ﷺ, what did he do? He started marching towards the enemy. He himself started marching towards the enemy, and he was saying, أَنَا النَّبِيُّ لَا كَذِبْ أَنَا ابْنُ عَبْدِ الْمُطَّلِبِ. I am the Prophet of Allah, no lie, no doubt about this. I am the son of Abdul Muttalib. Al-Abbas is holding the rope of the mule of the Prophet ﷺ, trying to bring him back. The Prophet ﷺ still wants to charge ahead. Al-Abbas is trying to hold him back, not to march towards Hawazin and Thaqif. So, and again, Abu Sufyan al-Harith, who's the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ, also is trying to hold the mule back and push it back so the Prophet ﷺ does not proceed more or closer to the enemy, because obviously arrows are being shot. But the Prophet ﷺ still pushes or charges ahead. Then when the Prophet ﷺ sees the situation like this, he unmounts his mule and he turns to Allah in dua. So he takes this moment and he says, Allahumma nazzil nasrak, Allahumma in tasha' la tu'bada ba'da al-yawm. He says, oh Allah, bring upon us your victory and your help. Oh Allah, if these people are not supported today, who would worship you? Then the Prophet ﷺ makes dua, Allahumma bika uhawil, wa bika usawil, wa bika uqatil. Basically, oh Allah, my power in this battle comes from you. My power comes from you. Now in this moment, one of the people of Quraysh who was joining the Muslim army, his name is Shayba ibn Uthman. Shayba ibn Uthman ibn Abi Talha. His father, Uthman ibn Abi Talha, by the way, he was killed in the Battle of Uhud. If you guys remember the Battle of Uhud, any of you who remember, we said the people who were carrying the flag of Quraysh, they were from the family of Abu Talha. So one of them was Uthman ibn Abi Talha. About 6 of them, 6 brothers, they were killed. Hamza was charging at them. That was Hamza's plan, right? Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib. He was charging at them, and because once the flag falls and it remains down for a while, that means loss, complete defeat. So Hamza wanted to bring the flag down. So from this family, Uthman ibn Abi Talha, about 6 of them, first one was holding the flag. He was killed by Hamza. Then it falls, his brother picks it up. Second brother was killed, third brother picks it up, and so on and so forth, until 6 of them were killed, or maybe even more. So now one of the children of these brothers, his name is Shayba, he still held the grudge against the Prophet ﷺ, and he wants to take revenge. And he was pretending to be a Muslim with the new Muslims in Mecca. And he was there. So he was close to the Prophet ﷺ in proximity. And he says, when I saw that the Muslims ran away, the Prophet ﷺ was by himself, maybe a small number of companions around him, I thought to myself, that's my opportunity. Let me take him out now. He was ready to stab the Prophet ﷺ in the back in this very critical situation. And he said to himself, oh, well, it seems actually he did not claim to be Muslim, or maybe he just pretended to be Muslim, but he said, I would follow anyone on earth but not Muhammad. Still, he held that grudge. So he says, I approached Muhammad when he was facing the enemy in Hunayn after the Muslims started running away. And I wanted to approach him. I came from his right side. Before I got to him, Al-Abbas came, the uncle of the Prophet. He joined the Prophet. He stood to his right. So then I said, I'd come through his left side. So I approached him through the left side. Then Abu Sufyan ibn al-Harith, the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ, joins the Prophet ﷺ. So he says, I can't get to him. Then he thought, okay, I shall approach him from behind and just, smack him with the sword and get rid of him at once. So he came close to the Prophet ﷺ. Upon that, he basically describes, he says, a fire lit right in front of me. A spark of fire just lit up in front of me. So he was trying to protect himself. The Prophet ﷺ, that catches the attention of the Prophet ﷺ, so he looks at him. The Prophet ﷺ knows obviously now what was going on. And obviously Jibreel told the Prophet ﷺ. So the Messenger ﷺ says to him, his name was Shayba. The guy's name was Shayba ibn Uthman. Again, the Arabs have this thing like just any other language. You have names and you have the short form of the name. And that's usually done in a way that is where you sort of, you use it with children to show affection. So the Prophet ﷺ, for example, Aisha radiallahu anha, he used to call her Ya Aish, not Ya Aisha, Ya Aish. It's a, for example, we said previously, Husam, you call him Hassuma. Yeah. Husam, you call him Hassuma. Hassuma is a very affectionate, jolly way of calling that. They use it with children to make them feel being loved and spoiled and special. So the Prophet ﷺ turns to this guy Shayba and he says, Ya Shayb. He uses the same kind of tactic with him, Ya Shayb. And the Prophet ﷺ means it. He says, Ya Shayb, udnu minni. He says, Ya Shayb, come close to me. Imagine in this chaotic situation, the Prophet ﷺ just says, Ya Shayb, come close to me. So he says, the Prophet ﷺ puts his hand on my chest. And then the Prophet ﷺ says, Allahumma adhib anhu shaytan. Oh Allah, take shaitan away from him. Or you just sort of free him from the impact of shaitan. He says, the moment the Prophet ﷺ lifts his hand off my chest, he becomes the dearest person to me. His love just filled my chest. Then the Prophet ﷺ says, Ya Shayb qatil al-kuffar. He says, Shayb, fight along with us against these kuffar. So he says, Wallahi, I was willing to defend the Prophet ﷺ with my own life in that moment. That's a miracle Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the Prophet ﷺ. We mentioned many of those incidents happened. Like one person, when the Prophet ﷺ was making tawaf, was approaching the Prophet ﷺ. One man came to Medina to kill the Prophet ﷺ, right? And the Prophet ﷺ was informed about that and he did the same thing. Then the Prophet ﷺ says to Al-Abbas, and Al-Abbas had a very loud, gigantic voice. He had this very loud voice, very manly, masculine voice. So the Prophet ﷺ says to him, Ud'u li ashab al-samura. Call upon the people who were with me during the Al-Hudaybiyah, the day of Al-Hudaybiyah, the Treaty of Al-Hudaybiyah. Because you remember before the Treaty of Al-Hudaybiyah, the companions who were with the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ took from them a covenant, an agreement that they would stay with the Prophet ﷺ and defend the truth with their life. So that was a very special agreement between them and the Prophet ﷺ. And this was what the Prophet ﷺ was instructing Al-Abbas to call upon. Call upon those who gave me the bay'ah under the tree. Its name is a samura, one type of tree, and that's where the bay'at al-Hudaybiyah, it took place. So upon calling this out, Al-Abbas, some of the companions, look at the narration, is extremely powerful. Like these Muslims were running away, running for their life. And again, this is like when that momentum builds up, it's hard to go against it. Emotionally and physically. Everyone is running away. You're completely immersed in that state of running for your life. It's just hard even to think about it. Even if you happen to think about, coming back, you just can't because of the whole momentum that is created by this huge number of people running in one direction. So upon hearing this, one narration is Al-Abbas says, فَوَاللَّهِ Al-Abbas calls upon them and his voice was loud. So he says, فَوَاللَّهِ لَكَأَنَّ عَطْفَتَهُمْ حِينَ سَمِعُوا صَوْتِي عَطْفَةَ الْبَقَرِ عَلَى أَوْلَادِهَا. He says, Wallahi, when they heard their voice and how they turned to us, they turned the whole attention, the whole direction to us, is just like how the deer, when it finds its hungry child and it wants to feed it. So it basically shows affection, it shows commitment. So they were running away. The moment they heard this word, the people of the bay'ah, straight away it like shocked them. It brought them into a new level of consciousness where they sort of woke up from their state of like loss or their state of heedlessness, and they were on autopilot just running. But it sort of woke them up, and as if they woke up again to this truth that they were missing at the moment, as if they were in a trance and just happened to come back to their senses. So he said they turned to us and they all came towards the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One description says وَيَذْهَبُ الرَّجُلُ. They started saying لَبَّيْكَ لَبَّيْكَ. لَبَّيْكَ obviously as you say in the Hajj, or here I come, like I'm responding to this call. So وَيَذْهَبُ الرَّجُلُ لِيُثْنِيَ بَعِيرَهُ فَلَا يَقْدِرُ عَلَى ذَلِكَ. So a man is on their camel and the camel is running away with everyone else in this whole powerful momentum. So they want to stop the camel. Upon hearing this, they decide to stop the camel. The camel would not stop. It's in this momentum. So he cannot do that. So what would he do? As the camel is running away, the person takes their weapons like their sword and their shield and everything, and they would jump off their camel. They couldn't stop the camel's just running away. It's out of control. They realize they can't bring the camel, they just jump off, taking their weapons with them. Then they go walk into the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they come to the Prophet, they join the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he sees them, his face lights up. Then he says, Al-an hamiya al-watis. Now it has really reached the heat of the moment with dealing with this battle. Then the Prophet ﷺ gets some sand and pebbles in his hand and he throws it towards their enemy and he says, Shahatul wujuh, may Allah, darken and destroy these faces. And then the Prophet ﷺ says, Inhazamu wa rabbil Ka'ba, inhazamu wa rabbil Ka'ba. They have been defeated. At that moment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down angels to help the Muslims. The angels did not take part in the battle, but what they did was psychological warfare. So they actually appeared to the people of Hawazin and Thaqif in different shapes. So there are different narrations. Some of them say, we saw something like a huge cloud coming from above. And it was like full of black things, small black things, like insects. We couldn't tell what this was. And it sort of stormed us, all of us, and it created just a chaos around us, and we had to run away. Some of them said that they heard something like a chain, like a metal chain, huge metal chain, being dragged on some rocks or stones. Something, it's a very loud voice. And some of them heard voices about them, like threatening them to run away. So they said the moment all of that happened in front of us, these are people who were from Hawazin and Thaqif, the enemies of the Muslims at the time. Later on they are mentioning these accounts. So upon hearing this, they started running away. 20,000 people running away. Who stayed with the Prophet ﷺ? A handful of people. Very small, tiny group of people stayed with the Prophet ﷺ. But Allah supported them with the angels. We said the angels did not fight. There's an agreement among the scholars, like Abdullah ibn Abbas mentions in a narration, that the angels only fought and took part in the battle, like literally fighting with the Muslims, only in the Battle of Badr. Other times when they were sent to help the Muslims, it was only some kind of psychological support and to bring about strike fear in the hearts of the enemy. Yeah, so so Hawazin and Thaqif, they start running away. And it's very surprising, a small number of Muslims, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala caused these 20,000 to lose faith and lose balance, and they started running away. The Prophet ﷺ looks around and he finds Sulaym. Sulaym, she's the mother of Anas bin Malik. The mother of Anas bin Malik, the servant of the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet ﷺ looks at her and he finds that she has, actually previously, before that moment, he found that she had a dagger with her, a small knife. And he says, Ya Sulaym, what is this? Like, why do you have this? So she says, he says, ما هذا الخنجر? What is this dagger that you have? She says, اتخذته إن دنا مني أحد المشركين بقرت به بطنه. She says, this is mine, I've brought it with me, so if any of those polytheists approaches me, I shall, open his stomach or cut his stomach with it. So the Prophet ﷺ started laughing. Then afterwards, it was Sulaym, she says to the Prophet ﷺ, اقتل من بعدنا من الطلقاء انهزموا بك. She says, O Messenger of Allah, all these new Muslims from Mecca, they just ran away. They ran away, they left us. So you should kill them. You should kill all of them. The Prophet ﷺ said, Ya Sulaym, inna Allah qad kafa wa ahsan. He says, Ya Sulaym, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, sufficed us. Allah has been enough for us. Allah, alhamdulillah, gave us victory even without them. Again, us humans generally would hold people to, would hold that against people, right? We expect the best from them, and if they do not really meet our expectations, we become very resentful, and we sort of start treating them bad and holding grudges and so on and so forth. Look how the Prophet ﷺ, he knows not to expect from these people more than what they can offer. Still, the main reason that they become Muslim is just because they lost power now. And doesn't mean not to accept their Islam. Doesn't mean not to accept their Islam. As long as someone says La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah, it's not for us to judge them. Or maybe he became Muslim because he wants to marry that girl. Regardless, that's not for us. The Prophet said, ما أمرت أن أشق عن قلوب الناس. I was not commanded to split open the hearts of people and check whether they were truly Muslim or not. If someone took their shahada, khalas, took their shahada out of fear, out of for the sake of some kind of worldly benefit, whatever it is, pragmatically, it's not up to me to judge them. We don't go into people's intentions in this way. And again, the Prophet himself, forget them, and just said, just leave it. Don't expect more from them, more than they can offer. That's very realistic. So there were a few incidents where, there was again in this moment when the Prophet and the small group that stayed with him were somehow still charging against Hawazin and Thaqif. There was a man from Thaqif who had a very long spear and he had a flag on top of it, but he was using it to stab Muslims. So Ali ibn Abi Talib had him in his mind with another companion from the Ansar. So they both charged against him. And he was on a camel. He was riding a very huge, massive camel. And so he was taking advantage of that. He wasn't reachable by the Muslims because of the height of the camel and because of the length of the spear he had. So Ali ibn Abi Talib sneaks around and he strikes the legs of the camel. And then the Ansari comes and he chops off the leg of that man. Then it seems that the man actually was killed in the battle. Again, some fights were still happening. Abu Qatada, for example, he sees a Muslim fighting with a non-Muslim, and so the non-Muslim takes over the Muslim. So he manages to put him to the ground, and he's about to strike him with his sword. Abu Qatada comes and he slices him with his sword. So the man was very physically strong. Although he was badly wounded, he turns to Abu Qatada and he gets hold of him. He gives him a bear hug. Abu Qatada says, I almost suffocated. I thought the man was going to kill me just by the pressure he applied on me. And he says, but then he lost his power slowly and he fell dead. So Then I took his armor and his weapons and so on and so forth. And the Prophet ﷺ, by the way, in the battlefield, there was a ruling here with regards to spoils of war. So there is two types of spoils of war. There is the general spoils of war that belong to maybe the leadership or belong to that state, or they are public property. They're not individual property. This is called ghanima. This is called ghanima. But there is the personal property of the individual fighters, soldiers, like their weapons, any personal belongings on them. This is called salb. So, in the battlefield, the soldiers that you kill, you as an individual, you have the right to their personal property. It's yours. It becomes automatically yours. It's not put together. That's automatically yours. That's called a salb. So anyone, the Prophet ﷺ says, "Man qatala muhariban falahu salbuhu." Whoever kills a soldier in the battlefield, then the personal belongings of that person automatically, become the property of this Muslim. The ghanima is different. That's the public property. That's for the leader to deal with, and he divides it. There's a system for dividing that. Again, so there's a few incidents where about some of the companions, how they in the battlefield they fought against some of the soldiers, and they got their own salb, or their own personal belongings. Of the Prophet ﷺ confirmed that. Then afterwards, when the non-Muslims ran away and it became safe in that area, the Prophet ﷺ started looking for Khalid ibn Walid. Where's Khalid ibn Walid? He hasn't seen him. So the Muslims start looking for Khalid ibn Walid. Then one companion finds him, young companion. He finds Khalid ibn Walid. Khalid ibn Walid had his camel. It was seated. He was leaning his back on his camel, and he was completely motionless. He was wounded. The Prophet ﷺ came to him, and the Messenger ﷺ blew on his wounds. He blew on his wounds, and that's another miracle Allah gave the Prophet ﷺ. He was healed instantly. His wounds were healed instantly. Now the Muslims were chasing Hawazin and Thaqif, and those were running away. And now many of the people of Mecca, those who became Muslim and those who did not become Muslim but still joined the Prophet ﷺ out of tribalism, when they saw that, now the new Muslims, faith started to take root in their hearts, because they saw how Allah gave the Prophet ﷺ and this small group of Muslims victory over these 20,000 people after everyone ran away. And the ones who were not Muslim, they started taking their shahada because it was a miracle for them. It was very unlikely that the Prophet ﷺ would remain strong and he would be given victory in this situation after the beginning of the battle was completely against them. It was a clear loss at the beginning. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the verses in Surah al-Tawbah, لَقَدْ نَصَرَكُمُ اللَّهُ فِي مَوَاطِنَ كَثِيرًا وَيَوْمَ حُنَيْنٍ إِذْ أَعْجَبَتْكُمْ كَثْرَتُكُمْ فَلَمْ تُغْنِ عَنْكُمْ شَيْئًا وَضَاقَتْ عَلَيْكُمُ الْأَرْضُ بِمَا رَحُبَتْ ثُمَّ وَلَّيْتُمْ مُدْبِرِينَ. Allah says Allah has given you victory on so many occasions. And on the day of Hunayn, when you were proud and dependent on your numbers, because some of the Muslims said, لا نغلب اليوم من قلة. The Muslims, as they were marching out of Mecca, 12,000 people, some of them started saying, we will never be defeated out of being outnumbered. It's not going to be a number issue from now on for us. So they sort of felt dependent on the numbers rather than on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But here Allah taught them the lesson that even a small group of people, when they put their trust in Allah and they faced death in this way with so much courage and reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah gave them victory. It's not about your numbers, because the majority of you just ran away. So when you were impressed with your numbers, but they did not avail you, they did not offer you anything, they did not benefit you. وَضَاقَتْ عَلَيْكُمُ الْأَرْضُ بِمَا رَحُبَتْ ثُمَّ وَلَّيْتُمْ مُدْبِرِينَ. So you were in a very tight spot. That's when you attacked, then you ran away. You turned back on your heels. ثم أنزل الله سكينته على رسوله وعلى المؤمنين وأنزل جنودا لم تروها وعذب الذين كفروا وذلك جزاء الكافرين. Then Allah sent down tranquility and peace upon the messenger and upon the believers, and Allah sent down soldiers you could not see. And then Allah tortured the disbelievers, and this is the punishment of those who disbelieve. So the Prophet ﷺ sends a group of the Muslims to chase the remains of Thaqif and Hawazin, but what they do basically, they gather, again their leader Malik ibn Auf gathers a good number of them back. He manages to bring them back because he wants to have another go on the Muslims. The Prophet ﷺ sends a small group of Muslims to chase them, which was under the leadership of Abu Amr al-Ash'ari. Abu Amr al-Ash'ari is the cousin of Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. So they go close to them, and it seems Malik ibn Auf decides not to fight the Muslims outside of al-Ta'if, because al-Ta'if is obviously on a mountain, is very fortified, it's very safe. So he decided to withdraw and go back into al-Ta'if and fight the Muslims from behind the walls. It was very difficult to break into al-Ta'if, but Abu Amr al-Ash'ari, the leader of this group, actually was shot with an arrow in his knee. When they pulled the arrow, the liquids in his knee came out, and he was bleeding profusely. He realized he was going to die, so he says to his cousin Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, his nephew Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, it was either his cousin or his nephew. He says to Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, ask the Prophet ﷺ to seek forgiveness for me. So the Prophet ﷺ actually they go back to the Prophet ﷺ, and Abu Amr al-Ash'ari dies, passes away. Abu Musa al-Ash'ari tells the Prophet ﷺ the story, and he tells him he asked that you seek forgiveness. So the Prophet ﷺ raises his hands, he says, Allahumma aghfir li Ubayd Abi Amr, oh Allah, forgive him, for Abu Amr. اللهم اجعله يوم القيامة فوق كثير من خلقك أو كثير من الناس. Oh Allah, make him on the day of judgment, raise him on the day of judgment above many of your creation or many of people. So Abu Musa al-Ash'ari says, and for me the same dua, O Messenger of Allah, so make istaghfir, seek forgiveness for me, just like that. He wants to seize the opportunity. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, اللهم اغفر لعبد الله بن قيس ذنبه وأدخله يوم القيامة مدخلا كريما. Oh Allah, forgive him his sins and grant him a goodly or a noble entrance on the day of judgment. He did not give the same dua. He did not give the same dua. So the Prophet ﷺ commands the Muslims to bring the spoils of war, not as salb, not the individual property. Individual property was taken by the individual soldiers, but the public property, whatever is left, the Prophet ﷺ commanded the Muslims to bring it together. So it was, and they took the captives. So those people ran away and they left their families, they left their kids and their wives, and there were 6,000 women and children. They left them behind. 24,000 camels, more than 40,000 sheep, and huge amounts of silver. The Prophet ﷺ puts them in one place, and he keeps a person to watch over them. His name is Mas'ud ibn Amr al-Ghifari, and they remained near the area where the battle took place. So there was this area Al-Ji'rana, where from Al-Ji'rana is very close to the valley where the Muslims were descending. It seems the number of the Muslims who died in the battle was a small number, it wasn't a big number, but there were some wounded people. Now we said Malik ibn Auf, the leader of Hawazin and Thaqif, now he withdraws to al-Ta'if, and they decide to camp or to base themselves there. The Prophet ﷺ catches up with them and he goes to al-Ta'if. He takes the Muslims to al-Ta'if and they set a siege around it. Now al-Ta'if, we said, had high walls, very well protected, hard to break into it. The Prophet ﷺ and the Muslims stayed there and they tried to keep shooting arrows, but it was pointless. Actually, the people of al-Ta'if, they were in a better position to shoot at the Muslims. So they caused a lot of wounds among the Muslims. So they complained to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam withdraws a little bit. He gives some space away from al-Ta'if, so the arrows do not reach where the arrows do not reach the Muslims. Then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that's the first time he uses the catapult. First time in the Muslim history, the Prophet uses the catapult to try to shoot at the walls of al-Ta'if, but still they could not break into it. And the shots that they were using, actually, some of them were made of iron balls that had spikes in them. They were called al-Hasak. They were called al-Hasak. The Muslims as well used a new tactic this time, and it was called al-Dabbaba. Al-Dabbaba. Now al-Dabbaba is used for tanks, the vehicles, these tanks that you use in war. But it's obviously, the modern tank that we have is development of this. What was the tank? It was basically a shield, a big shield made of wood and hard, dry leather, layers of leather, that would be a shield and protection, and it would be more like a canopy, huge canopy, where sometimes 10 people, 20 people could be underneath it. And it also had this wooden structure where they could hold it and get close to the walls, so even if they are shot with arrows, they're safe. So that was a shield for them. So that was used by the Muslims on that day as well. But the people of al-Ta'if were very well equipped to deal with that. So what they were doing, they were actually throwing melting copper and iron on these tanks. So they burnt, and it caused a lot of casualties among the Muslims, or a lot of loss, basically loss in these tanks. So the Prophet ﷺ then said, okay, just withdraw. Then the Prophet ﷺ kept making announcement to the people of al-Ta'if, whoever wants to leave al-Ta'if and not join these people of al-Ta'if, we'll give them that, we'll give them safety. They can come out of al-Ta'if and we'll let them go. So actually some people, they didn't want to be with Thaqif and Hawazin in al-Ta'if, they didn't want to join this, they wanted to get out of this. The Prophet ﷺ gave them that freedom. So they came out and they joined the Muslims. Prophet ﷺ set them free. They should go. Some of them were actually slaves already. The Prophet ﷺ as well freed them. Then the Prophet ﷺ sees a dream, and in the dream he says it to Abu Bakr basically. He says, I received a bowl that was full of butter or ghee. It was presented to me. And then a peacock was hitting it, and so it was spilt over. So the Prophet ﷺ interpreted that as there's no point, breaking into al-Ta'if. We're not going to break into it. So when Abu Bakr heard this, by the way, Abu Bakr was very good at interpreting dreams. So he says to the Prophet ﷺ, مَا أَظُنُّ أَن تُدْرِكَ مِنْهُمْ يَوْمَكَ هَذَا مَا تُرِيد. Abu Bakr says to the Prophet ﷺ, doesn't seem you're going to get what you want from al-Ta'if. You're not going to break into it. The Prophet ﷺ says, وَأَنَا لَا أَرَى ذَلِكَ. Prophet ﷺ says, and I don't see that we will get what we want from them. So the Prophet ﷺ makes an announcement that we're going back. We are going back. Well, the Muslims are not happy. They want to have a full victory. They want to get rid of these people. So the Prophet ﷺ says, okay, if you insist, go ahead, deal with them. So they try to break into the castle or the fortress of al-Ta'if, but they get more casualties. Again, they realize, there's no way you can break into that. Then they decide to go with the decision of the Prophet ﷺ to leave, and the Prophet ﷺ withdraws to the area where the original battle took place, or close to it, which is al-Ji'rana, where he left the spoils of war. Around that time, when the Prophet ﷺ was withdrawing from al-Ta'if, a man came to him, and this man is Surah ibn Malik. This takes us to the time of Hijrah. The Prophet ﷺ was making Hijrah with Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. A man was chasing them. His name was Surah ibn Malik, from Ashja', from the tribe, or from Ju'shum, the tribe of Ju'shum. So now Suraqa comes. Now remember what did the Prophet say to him? He says, let us go, stop chasing us, and I shall give you the 2 golden bracelets of Kisra, the king of Persia. He said to the Prophet ﷺ, write a document, like prove that to me, write me something, a contract with regards to this. The Prophet ﷺ commands, I think it was Abdullah ibn Urayqat who was with them, he actually wrote a document for Suraqa that the Prophet ﷺ will guarantee you the 2 bracelets of Kisra. And Suraqa kept it with him. Because Suraqa, when he saw that he could not catch up with the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr, he said, فَعَلِمْتُ أَنَّهُمَا مَمْنُوعَانِ, I realized they were protected. He realized it wasn't normal. What was happening to him wasn't normal. So he saw the signs. He knew this was a special person. This prophet, he was a prophet from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he kept that. He realized this was going to happen. So now he actually, at this moment, he comes to the Muslims, and he goes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he says, so I see the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam on his camel, and I could see the ankle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then I approach the Prophet, and I bring the document the Prophet ﷺ gave to me. Then he says, ثُمَّ قُلْتُ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ هَذَا كِتَابُكَ لِي. He says, O Messenger of Allah, this is your promise to me. أَنَا سُرَاقَ بْنُ مَالِكَ بْنُ جُعْشُمْ, I am Suraqa ibn Malik. The Prophet ﷺ says, يَوْمُ وَفَاءٍ وَبِرٍّ. He says, this is a day where we pay you, where we fulfill your promise for you. Basically, we're going to confirm that. The Prophet ﷺ is going to confirm this udunu, come close. She said, I came to the Prophet and I gave him salam. Then he asked him a question about, he says, like, he had obviously from those days, he had a lot of camels, and he says, I take my camels for the water fountain or for them to drink, but sometimes I find some stray camels. And they come and join my camels and drink, but that's extra effort for me and extra time. Shall I just, keep them with my camels to drink and then they go, or shall I just, prevent these camels from drinking? The Prophet ﷺ says to him, "في كل ذات كبد حر أجر." In every living creature that is thirsty and you offer water, you will get reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then the Prophet ﷺ stays in al-Ji'ran, the same area, for 13 days. He doesn't want to distribute the spoils of war. Why? Because he's still hoping that Thaqif and Hawazin would actually change their mind and accept Islam. So he was going to give them back everything. Again, it wasn't about spoils of war. But they did not. So 13 days, and the Prophet said, that's enough. I have to. And obviously now you have in the Muslim army a lot of new Muslims, and those people were still coming from the days of Jahiliyyah. Like, these people just want their share. They're very aggressive, they're very selfish about it. Like they're not gonna make any compromise there. These people, like, my money, give me my money. Like, they're gonna make you feel bad about it. And we'll probably come to see some examples. So the Prophet ﷺ started giving who? The new Muslims from Quraysh. So he gave Abu Sufyan ibn al-Harith 100 camels. He gave al-Aqra' bin Habis, one of the tribes who lived around Mecca, not from Quraysh, gave him 100 camels. He gave Uyayna ibn Hisn 100 camels. He gave Alqama and others 100 camels. Al-Abbas ibn Mardas, he got less than that, so he started initiating some poetry. Some of the Arabs would speak spontaneously speak poetry. So he was basically blaming the Prophet ﷺ. He says, أَتَجْعَلُ نَهْبِي وَنَهْبَ الْعُبَيْدِ بَيْنَ عُيَيْنَةَ وَالْأَقْرَعِ فما كان بدر ولا حابس يفوقان مرداس في مجمعي وما كنت دون امرئ منهما وما تخفض اليوم لا يرفعي. He says, oh Muhammad, like, I'm not less than the other people that you gave them, and I'm not less courageous than them, and I haven't done less than they have done, and if you give me less, that's going to stay with me for the rest of my life. Give me like them. So the Prophet ﷺ gives them like them. Okay, take it, no problem. Then the Prophet ﷺ gives Hakim ibn Hizam, again from Quraysh, who was on the side, right? Gives him 100 camels. Then Hakim ibn Hizam says, give me more. The Prophet ﷺ gives him another 100. He asks for more. The Prophet ﷺ gives him another 300 now. Then he asks for more. Then the Prophet says, Ya Hakim, inna hadha al-mala khadirun hulwun. He says, this money is very attractive. It's more like lavish green, something that the eye likes to see, and the soul wants more of it. Like yourself craves more of it, and it's sweet. فَمَنْ أَخَذَهُ بِسَخَاوَةِ نَفْسٍ بُورِكَ لَهُ فِيهِ. Whoever takes it with not with a greedy soul, not from a greedy position, then it will be blessed for them. You take what you need of it, and it will be blessed. There will be barakah in it. وَمَنْ أَخَذَهُ بِإِشْرَافِ نَفْسٍ لَمْ يُبَارَكْ لَهُ فِيهِ. But who takes it with greed, it will not be blessed for him. وَكَانَ كَالَّذِي يَأْكُلُ وَلَا يَشْبَعْ. And anyone who takes it with greed, it would not be enough for him, and it will not be blessings for him, and it would be like someone who's just eating and eating and eating and never feeling satiated, never feeling full. So no matter how much you take, it's not going to be enough for you. So you don't have a sense of richness, in your heart. So that's not going to help you. It's going to be even worse for you, because a person who eats without feeling satiated is going to actually harm their body and harm themselves. It's going to be more of a burden on their system as well. وَالْيَدُ الْعُلْيَا خَيْرٌ مِنَ الْيَدِ السُّفْلَى. And the hand that gives is better than the hand that takes. Prophet ﷺ is teaching him principles. He gave him what he asked for, but he's teaching him a lesson. It's better to give rather than take. You better be in the position of giving rather than taking. So Hakim ibn Hizam, he says, I replied to the Prophet ﷺ, Ya Rasulullah, وَالَّذِي بَعَثَكَ بِالْحَقِّ لَا أَرْزَأُ أَحَدًا بَعْدَكَ شَيْئًا حَتَّى أُفَارِقَ الدُّنْيَا. So, O Messenger of Allah, Wallahi, I will not push anyone after you to give me. I'm not going to put any pressure on anyone to give me anything. This is why Hakim ibn Hizam afterwards, he did not take any kind of gift from anyone after that moment. Even during the Khilafah of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he had his dues. Muslims would have their dues. Abu Bakr would give him and he would refuse to take. And Umar al-Khattab, he was giving him and he would refuse to take. To the point that Umar al-Khattab said, he brought the Muslims, he said, bear witness that I'm giving him his right and he's refusing it. It's not my fault. So he kept that promise that he gave to the Prophet ﷺ until he died. Yeah, so the Prophet ﷺ gave a lot of those new Muslims, to the point some of them said that Muhammadun yu'ti ata'a man la yakhsha al-faqr. Muhammad is giving people as if he never feels poverty, he never feels that he's going to run out of stuff. Then the Prophet ﷺ looks at Safwan ibn Umayyah. The Prophet ﷺ gives Safwan ibn Umayyah, by the way. Although he's non-Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ gives him 100 camels. Then the Prophet ﷺ collects remember the Prophet ﷺ borrowed from Safwan ibn Umayyah some weaponry, right? And some shields. Some of these shields went missing. So the Prophet ﷺ was giving it back to him and he said, some of your shields are missing. Do you want us to compensate you for that? Reimburse you for that? So he says, لا يا رسول الله لأن في قلب اليوم ما لم يكن يومئذ. He says, no, you don't have to compensate me, because my heart is in a different state than it was that day. So he started having a change in heart. During this time, a man, his nickname was Dhul Khuwaysira at-Tamimi, and his name is Hurqus ibn Zuhair. Hurqus ibn Zuhair. And actually in the books of history, Hurqus ibn Zuhair, he insists to be one of the Khawarij. And the Prophet ﷺ actually predicted this. So when the Prophet ﷺ was giving people their shares of the spoils of war, he says, Ya Muhammad, in front of people, i'dil, be just. Speaking to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ looks at him and he says, Wayhak, man ya'dil in lam a'dil. The Prophet ﷺ says, woe to you. Who's going to be just if I'm not just? The Prophet ﷺ is doing justice, and the Prophet ﷺ is giving the spoils of war based on revelation, based on instructions from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, وَيْلَكْ وَمَنْ يَعْدِلْ إِن لَمْ أَكُنْ أَنَا أَعْدِلْ لَقَدْ خِبْتُ وَخَسِرْتُ إِن لَمْ أَعْدِلْ. I would be destroyed if I'm not just, if I'm not fair. Umar ibn Khattab says to the Prophet ﷺ, let me chop off the head of this hypocrite. The Prophet ﷺ says, معاذ الله أن يتحدث الناس أني أقتل أصحابي. He says, I seek Allah's protection that people start saying I'm killing my companions, because people don't know. إن هذا وأصحابه يقرؤون القرآن لا يجاوز حناجرهم يمرقون منه كما يمرق السهم من الرمية. Prophet says, this man and his followers, they will read the Quran, but it will not go beyond their throats. Meaning, it will just go through, they will just be reciting it, but they will not be comprehending and understanding and digesting its meaning. They will not understand it properly. يمرقون منه كما يمرق السهم من الرمية. They would basically enter into Islam and leave out of it just like an arrow. When an arrow goes through the game, let's say through a rabbit, and if it's very strong, it actually goes into it and out of it. And if you catch the arrow afterwards, you won't see any signs on it. Any signs of it. No flesh, no blood, nothing. Because of the swiftness of its penetration of that body, of that game. So the Prophet ﷺ is giving an analogy here that these people would enter into Islam so quickly, that is so impressive, that in a short time they seem to be doing a lot of this, seem to be like reaching a high level in Islam or advanced level of Islam, or they're already doing something, they're already involved, but so quickly as well they will get out of it. Because of their wrong understanding, they would come up with something completely new, something completely off. So that's how the Prophet ﷺ described him. And look how this man is basically making an issue to the Prophet ﷺ in public. I mean, if he had an issue, which first he had bad suspicion of the Prophet ﷺ, which was a very evil thing. But again, if he had a misunderstanding, he could have approached the Prophet ﷺ privately. But he did that in public. And by the way, that's problematic. There are people who like to make a scene or a show of thing. So you'll find maybe, sometimes you might pray in an imam in a masjid where you don't agree with the imam, by the way, or you don't like what the imam say. You should not violate the sanctity of the masjid and the rights of the imam in front of their congregation, even if you think you're upon the truth. So this man, he stood in public and he sort of critiqued the Prophet ﷺ in this disrespectful manner. So again, if you're in a masjid where you disagree with the imam or you don't like what the imam says, you don't speak in public. You don't speak in public, because you are creating a greater fitna. People usually look up to their imam or to their da'iyah or to their teacher or to their scholar or to religious people in their community. You cannot violate this, because that helps them in their religion. It helps them. But if you sort of break that image in people's eyes, it's no good. It's no good. It has a lot of negative consequences. But again, I mean, you're going to find this. Unfortunately, alhamdulillah, I mean, here it's not very common. But in the Muslim countries, subhanAllah, you find someone disagrees with the imam, stand up, sometimes in the middle of the khutbah. What you did was wrong. That's not right. You can't do this. Or imam does something, or you after the salah, you did such and such and such and such. That shows this person has serious issues. Has serious issues. So you should be careful about these things. Sometimes an imam uses a hadith which is inauthentic, not authentic, weak. Some of the brothers, they go and stand up, that's a weak hadith in front of people. And think, no, people have to know. I mean, come on, let's face it, who pays attention? I mean, really, who pays attention? But that's not, again, the damage you're bringing about, maybe there is benefit pointing out this hadith is weak, but you're creating damage on the other side that might be far greater than the benefit you're bringing about. So in this case, what you do, you go to the imam afterwards, say, you mentioned this hadith. As far as I know, maybe I heard, or maybe we can look it up, maybe we can verify. Maybe this hadith is not authentic, or maybe some scholars said so and so. Maybe he's following an opinion of another scholar of hadith who actually made the hadith authentic and you don't know about. Or maybe it's still weak and he used it. Well, he either accepts your advice and then he deals with his congregation, he explains to them that, I used this hadith, it wasn't authentic, and so on and so forth. Or maybe he just insists, no, I want to use it, I don't care. Fine, you've done your job. You don't go and expose the imam to their congregation. That shows a very, very sick heart, honestly. And even if someone claims, I'm doing this for the sake of religion, you're not. You are not. That's not how for the sake of religion goes. There was a man who attended the halaqah of Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala. And Imam Malik was asked about in wudu, washing the feet, do you have to let the water go, between your toes? Which is تخليل الأصابع, which is basically a sunnah from the Prophet ﷺ. When he washed his feet, he would get his smaller finger of the left hand between his toes to make sure the water, he would rub between his toes with his small finger of the left hand. But Imam Malik did not know about this. He says, no, you don't have to do that. But there was a man from Mecca who heard the hadith from some of the people in Mecca, and he knows it very well. So he waited until the halaqah was over. Then he goes and approaches Imam Malik privately, and he tells him, there's a hadith, حدثنا فلان عن فلان. He gives him the sanad. I heard it from so and so and so and so and so, until the Prophet, or from one of the companions of the Prophet خلل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بين أصابع قدميه. The Prophet ﷺ would rub with his finger between his toes when he made wudu. Imam Malik knows the narrators of the hadith. He says, هذا حديث حسن, هذا حديث صحيح. This is an authentic hadith. It's a good hadith. He could tell automatically. Then he says, وبعد ذلك رأيت الإمام مالك يحدث بذلك فإذا سئل عن تخليل الأصابع قال به. So I saw Imam Malik narrating the hadith to people. And every time he's asked about washing or rubbing between the toes, he would actually give that fatwa. That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. But some people have hatred. Some people have issues, man. Some people have serious issues with their mind and their heart. And that's, by the way, that's a very, very dangerous disease. To use religion as a weapon to lynch people with. Don't do that. You're messing with Allah. You're messing with Allah. It's serious. It is serious. You can't satisfy your ego by playing around with the religion and using it to whip people with. At that moment, because some of the sub-tribes in Hawazin and Thaqif was Banu Sa'd, we said. So, who came to the Prophet ﷺ? His nursing mother, Halima. She was an old lady at the time. She comes to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ, he puts a cushion for her to sit on, and he welcomes her. That's his nursing mother, Halima as-Sa'diyya radiyallahu anha. She becomes Muslim. She becomes Muslim. Now something happened, and the Ansar are looking at all of this, and the spoils of war almost ran out. And it's only the new Muslims, people of Mecca, people who fought against Islam and Muslims for so many years, and they run away in this battle. The Prophet ﷺ is giving them hundreds of camels, and the Ansar haven't got anything yet. Anything. So they start actually speaking about that. Why is the Prophet ﷺ doing this? Why is he giving his people? What about us? These people, they killed us. They did that. They did that. Why didn't they give us? Why didn't the Prophet ﷺ is giving them and he's not giving us? Okay, that's actually a beautiful situation. One of the most, notable moments in the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We're going to leave it for 2 weeks from now, inshallah. Next week we have Mufti Muhammad Munir, inshallah. Then the week after, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Questions? You can take a couple. No questions? You can go home earlier. No comment now. They ultimately end up, we'll come to that, inshallah. So let's leave it till that point. No questions? Okay, see you in 2 weeks, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan wa sallallahu wa sallam Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. إلهي. السلام. شو أخبارك؟